Welcome everybody to everything you need to know about Young Jedi. So this is the start of a new series where we're going to go through each set of Young Jedi CCG and kind of delve into what's interesting, what's rare, how to collect it. But this video is intended to give an overview of the game. So there are 6 sets, 686 cards, some promos, some enhanced stuff. And I'm joined by Young Jedi Master and expert Eric, because I think Eric is more into this game than I am and has more knowledge. So I thought I'd bring out an expert who actually has a lot of the stuff. So we're just going to go through all the sets today and chat about them a little bit and then a deeper dive into each of them. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish. Eric, what do you love about Young Jedi? Let's start with that.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, my love of the game is this was my first CCG ever. So this came out in 1999, and I was in junior high in that time. And this is actually what got me into CCGs and into Decipher and all of that. So to me, that's the biggest nostalgia. But it's also just, I would say, a great fast-paced game where most of the games that are aimed at the simpler market tend to get really boring really quick. This one I still think to this day is a fun game. And I think largely that's because of the Destiny aspect, that no other simple games like this really utilize the Destiny component. And so I think that was huge that they integrated that. So just you can play a game in 15 minutes, and that's certainly nothing you can say for most of Decipher's CCGs.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it turns out 15 minutes is the ideal length for a card game, right? Like that's what really the formula for success for Magic, for other big TCGs. It's under 20-minute game mostly, right? Unless you're playing like Commander or something. So, well, let's delve into the set. So first set, Menace of Dark Maul, came out in 1999. I think you have some sealed products. Maybe I'll add that in and we can look at it. Or do you want to chat about it first?
Yeah, we can chat about it. But if you turn on my other camera, I can kind of show.
Sure.
Booster packs started.
We love doing more show and tell.
Sure. So what Young Jedi did that was actually pretty good is they did the really nice color coding, so it's really easy to tell what product is what. So Menace of Darth Maul was red. And then, it's the same silhouette of Obi-Wan on all of the products, or at least for the booster packs. And then just solid color of whatever the set was. So again, I think even for collecting, they tried to make it very simple about what are you buying. So the first set was Menace of Darth Maul. Now, I will say the first 3 sets, really all 3 together, are the core set. That's what I would say is unique about this game, is there wasn't, like in Lord of the Rings, for example, where you might have the block system where the first set in the block is larger. This, the first 3 sets are all of equal size. They're all 140 cards. And they also are centered around one planet. So largely Menace of Darth Maul is centered around the planet of Tatooine. So you will see very sparing cards from Coruscant and Naboo, but primarily all Tatooine. So this game is based off of a 3-planet system, and the idea is whoever controls 2 out of 3 planets wins the game. And those planets are Tatooine, Coruscant, and Naboo, the episode 1 main planets, basically. And so yeah, this first set was based off of Tatooine.
So just an aside, because I think a lot of people post, hey, I found my Young Jedi collection, like, what's it worth? This set is pretty inexpensive, right? The first 3 sets are all pretty inexpensive, my understanding.
Yeah, very, very accessible, especially this one I'd say is the most accessible, and Jedi Council, very accessible. Battle of Naboo, the 3rd set, probably a little harder to find, but the first 3 sets, as far as CCGs go, are overwhelmingly inexpensive. Yeah, especially as far as Star Wars and Decipher properties, it's very inexpensive. Yeah.
And this one has a little Darth Maul in the bottom right, and a rare is a star, just for folks who find this stuff in their garage. That's how to figure out what set this is, right?
Correct. Yeah, the set icon is a little Darth Maul. So they did do a nice job again for the collecting on this, that you could tell what the rarity is. You could tell what the and we can cover more in a separate video on this, kind of some of the different collecting nuances of each set. But yeah, that's the collector symbol that you'd be looking for.
Okay, so that's set 1, and that was in English, Japanese, and German. Did I get that right?
You did, yes, yeah.
German is such a funny one. I mean, I think that German's actually a really big CCG collecting market, but it's just Maybe I would have thought Spanish, just given, all of Latin America, but it's English, German, and Japanese.
Correct, yeah.
All right, set 2, though.
So then set 2 was the Jedi Council, which is your Coruscant set. And again, it's going to look very similar. It's just going to have blue wrappers, and this is going to be centered around Coruscant. So that one's actually color-coded with, the Coruscant. If you see in this game, they have location bonuses where if you're fighting on a planet location, you get power bonuses. Coruscant is always blue. Naboo is always green. Tatooine is yellow. So the wrappers all matched, other than, Tatooine didn't match, but, blue pack wrappers, primarily cards from the blue planet Coruscant. So again, very, very simple in terms of identification. And these are all very inexpensive, readily available, easy to find. I will say the first 2 sets, Menace of Darth Maul and Jedi Council, none of the character cards had game text on them. So it's just power, your location bonus, deploy damage, basically just statistics, and lore, no actual game text of, when he deploys, do this, or any power bonus here, power bonus if this person is fought. So none of that is in the first 2 sets at all. So they did keep that very simple, where it's basically the difference between Menace of Darth Maul and Jedi Council is really just which planet is it centered around, meaning where do you get your location bonuses. So like if you had a Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, whomever from the first set, they'd have the power bonuses on Tatooine. The second set, they'd be statistically identical, except for then their power bonuses would be on Coruscant. So
makes a lot of sense.
Pretty simple concept there.
Yeah, and so I actually think we'll move on to set 3, but I'll just say on set 2, I think it was my favorite set because I also played this a little bit growing up, and it was my favorite because you had all the obscure Jedis, like like Yaddle. I'm like, oh, that female Yoda's name is Yaddle, and it was just the first encounter with this like deeper lore that you had, one screen still from the movies, and suddenly this character has a card.
Yeah, and I will say that's what I find interesting about these cards is that in the Jedi Council, for example, there are some characters that don't even have a Star Wars CCG card in the main CCG, and their only thing is in the Young Jedi. And the Young Jedi is really nice, even especially for its time. It's got full art of the character across the entire card, and really just the borders have the title and the power and the lore. So you get a really nice large image of some of these Jedi that you don't see literally in any other CCG except Young Jedi.
Right. All right. Set 3 though, we're going to Naboo.
Naboo, yep. So set 3 then is Battle of Naboo, and these are green pack wrappers. Again, similar with this being kind of the third set in the core game. And I will say the one thing they did that I found kind of annoying is they spread the planet locations out among these 3 sets. So if you wanted to be at a specific location, you might have not had access to that location until it was released. And so it's just like you get one of each location, Tatooine, Coruscant, Naboo. You get one with Menace of Darth Maul. You get a different one with Jedi Council. You get the third different one with Battle of Naboo. So there's 3 potential locations on each planet that you could be at. And that's where I say it's kind of like you need all 3 to basically play the core game. To even have access to each of the 3 locations on each planet, you need all 3 of these first base sets.
So question on starters, by the way, are there 2 starters? Like I see one starter there. Is there a different starter, like a dark side, light side? Sort of?
Great question. No, there's not dark side and light side starters. This starter deck is 2 30-card decks, 1 light side, 1 dark side. So if you want technically a tournament legal deck, which is 60 cards, you would need 2 starter decks, and you would combine the 2 light side halves together and the 2 dark side halves together, and then you'd have a legal deck. But if you're just playing out of the box, you're playing basically an abbreviated game with 30-card decks. But it does have light and dark in the same one. So they all have Obi-Wan on it. It's not like there's one with Darth Maul on it. Although I should say Darth Maul's on the back here.
Actually never turned one of those over before. So
yeah. Well, it's super weird with Jet. So you saw that Battle of Naboo, all green. On the Jedi Council, it's really interesting because you got Obi-Wan blue on the front, and then you turn it over and you got Maul red on the back. So that's kind of cool. Jedi Council in particular. And then the Menace is red either way. So, but yeah, the Jedi Council actually has the kind of different different color for each of them. But yeah,
by the way,
oh, sorry, Matt.
Languages. I was just going to say, so Japanese was up through the second set and then dropped off after that. So with Battle for Naboo, it was just English.
Correct. Yeah. As of Battle of Naboo, it's only English. Jedi Council doesn't even have that in German. It's only English and Japanese. But yeah, so by the time you get to the third set, it's only English. One other note, Matt, on starter decks that's worth mentioning is the starter decks do not have rare cards in them or any random insertions whatsoever. It's just the same fixed allotment in every starter deck. So Young Jedi starter decks tend to be, very low value because you're basically, if you're playing the game for constructed, you're getting the decks for the location cards. And once you have a couple copies of each location, you don't really care beyond that. You don't get any rares. You don't really get any other good cards in there. So they're pretty low value. And it's not something that if you're a buyer, you want to be like, oh, I'm going to buy that starter deck and crack it for the rares, because there are none. So.
Okay, let's move on to set 4 here. So can we, set 4 is going to be, I used to know this. It is Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
Fate of the Duels.
Yeah, this one's pretty cool. So when you get into Duel of the Fates, then you're talking, it's a 60 card set. So that's very small for CCGs. But again, when you have your core sets are 140, your expansion sets are only going to be 60 cards. So 30 light side, 30 dark side. This one features Darth Sidious, which is pretty cool. That's the box. And then it doesn't have starter decks again, because it's just an expansion, not a base set, no starter decks. But you do have purple packs for this one, and still using the silhouette of Obi-Wan, but with a purple pack. And then I will say a couple cool things that were introduced in Duel of the Fates is they introduced a dueling mechanic where your Jedi or Sith characters could duel each other. And that was just kind of a side mini game you play by shuffling up your deck and drawing a hand of cards and dueling back and forth with the destiny numbers. Don't need to get into that too much, but that was a new mechanic. And then they did also introduce in that set ultra rare cards, which are a 6-pointed star in that little logo that you were mentioning. So ultra rares, they had a special dueling version of Qui-Gon and Darth Maul, which got bonuses when they duel. And those were ultra rare cards in that set.
The 6-pointed star, we'll show it up in a later video, but it looks almost unnatural how many points there are on it. The first time I looked, I was like, wait, why? There's something off on this.
Yeah. And one other note of comparison between Duel of the Fates versus the core sets that I failed to mention is the core sets do have select 18 of the cards selected to be foiled, and foils are randomly inserted in packs in those first 3 base sets of, like I said, of 18 select cards in that set. But Duel of Fates does not have foils. They only have, the ultra rare is kind of the chase out of that.
Okay, so let's move on to set number 5, which I think most people have never seen. So this is the color, Ubuntu Eve pod racing, right? It's just
it's kind of a yellow sandy color. So I'll show you the box here. Has Anakin and his pod racer there. And again, this is a 60 card set, very similar in composition, to the, Duel of the Fates in terms of how big the set is. And it also introduced a new mechanic being pod racing. And then also no foils, but featured 2 ultra rare cards. And your 2 ultra rares in this set are Anakin and Sebulba, special ones that get bonuses for pod racing.
And my understanding is both, as soon as you get into Duel of the Fates, just talking collecting a little bit here, Duel of the Fates and Ubuntu Eve, the ultra rares have become quite chase. It's not hundreds of dollars, but I understand that Ubuntu Eve ultra rares are $50 plus, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right, and maybe even Ubuntu might even be a little higher than that now at this point. But yeah, they're very chase in terms of, I would say, progressively, Duel of the Fates is substantially more expensive than any of the ones before it. And then I would say even that Ubuntu Eve is substantially more expensive than Duel of the Fates. They introduced some mechanics in there with searching your deck and being able to pull out any particular cards with an Anakin's friend mechanic or some dark side counterparts that really just made the Ubuntu Eve cards nothing to do with pod racing, but just made the cards so much better than what you'd seen previously, where previously you'd have a, cheap character that does nothing. Now all of a sudden it's a cheap character that searches your deck for any character of your choice or searches for a weapon or a battle card. So I mean, it really ramped up the power level there so it was a very desirable set. And again, with being the last of the main sets, was pretty short printed.
So we're moving on to our last set here, and then there's sort of this miscellaneous category where Battle of Naboo and Darth Maul had enhanced sets. Maybe we just talk about those really quick, but those are sort of, there's 9 promos in each? No, 8 promos in each?
I want to say maybe it's 6 in Menace and 12 in Naboo. I can't remember the exact numbers, but so the Menace, you only got 1 promo per pack, and it's similar to like a Star Wars CCG enhanced product where they're repackaging 4 booster packs with a face card on it, and the face card is a enhanced, they called it, which is basically a wild card. You could play it in any of the 6 deck construction dots. And you got 1 wild card per pack of Menace enhanced, but Battle of Naboo enhanced, you'd get 3 wild cards in it. So I want to say it's 6 in the first and 12 in the second, but I could be wrong on that.
All right, but let's talk about the coolest set. I think this is a really cool product, and actually I think sequentially Ubuntu Eve might have been after this, but it's set 5, released after. But let's talk about Reflections, which I think many people don't even know there's a Young Jedi Reflections out there.
Yeah, Young Jedi Reflections is probably one of my favorite CCG sets of all time. Just it's very short printed, very hard to find, and again, the power creep on the cards is ridiculous.
Do you have a box, by the way?
Yeah, I do have a box, and I also have a pack. So here's what a box looks like, and this departs from the Young Jedi design and looks more like Decipher's other products in terms of graphic design. It's a beautiful box. Obviously, it's got Naboo Theed Palace in the background there, and then the characters kind of in the foreground. So that's what a box looks like. And they use kind of the same Star Wars style with the, star with the different shape, with the different characters in it, whatever you want to say. And then they use that on the booster pack too. So the booster pack's also just beautiful graphic design, with that same star with the different, or pie, whatever you want to call it, with the different characters in it. So yeah, this is a fantastic set, very expensive. I would say these packs typically trade around $50 a pack, just for a single booster pack, and $600-800 for a booster box.
So I think as a rule, for folks wondering, Young Jedi sort of follows the rule of many dead CCGs, where it's not the earlier sets that were printed continuously that hold a lot of value. It's the later sets that were short printed before the doors shut on this IP. So Reflections, Ubuntu Eve, and a little bit of Duel of Fates are really where, if you're buying a master set, that's most of your value, right? It's going to be in the Reflections.
Yeah, the Reflections, especially the Reflections, is going to be so substantially higher even than Ubuntu Eve. It's got a whole base set of foils like most Reflections do, including, I believe, 6 ultra rares. So it's impossible to create your own set from packs at this point. You'd have to just be trading for singles, and it's a whole nother ordeal. I would say anyone who's looking to get into this game just for fun and to play it, I would highly recommend doing the first 3 sets: Menace of Darth Maul, Jedi Council, Battle of Naboo, because you can get basically a full complete game, all the planets, all the characters, all the locations. You're not getting very much game text at all, because game text was introduced in the later sets, but you do have a little bit of game text on Battle of Naboo cards. But that will play you a full complete game, and it'll do so very inexpensively. And to be perfectly honest, as someone who does play this game, the dueling mechanic really causes huge swings and ups and downs in the game, as far as they even changed the dueling rules, I believe, 2 different times under Decipher's management. And then the players committee, when this was short-lived, changed it again. So they never did quite get a good dueling rule. Pod racing is a total mess. So basically, if you play those first 3 sets, there's no dueling, there's no pod racing. It's just a nice, simple shuffle up and play game, and you've got your characters, you got your color-coded location bonuses on each of the 3 planets. It really is honestly a better game just with those first 3 core sets.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't played too much recently, and just speaking to the inexpensive piece, I picked up, just speaking from my own experience, the first 3 sets plus bulk for $60. So like that's when we say inexpensive. That's literally, how it was without the foils, but it is a pretty cheap game to pick up sets versus other games where, one set's going to run you $100 plus. So I hope this video is helping people get information if they want to get into it. I find the price point of this to be really alluring if you're actually just looking to play and you're not worried about the cards. But there's also some collecting stuff that's pretty interesting, which I think brings us to our last thing, which is the tournament foils, which I think there was, 18 of them or so. We don't have to delve too deep in there, but there's 18 tournament foils that sort of wrap stuff up, and a few kind of chase. Captain Tarpals, I think, is one of the chase ones.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Young Jedi tournament foils, and maybe a little bit similar to Star Wars CCG, is that some of the cards are just they're basically largely cards that would not be playable if you're playing the full game all the way through the end. The tournament foils are primarily of cards in those first 3 sets that are just completely unplayable if you're playing the full game. Their value just comes from their chase aspect and from the fact that they were released at, tournaments or conventions, and in very limited print run. So yeah, you're exactly right. One of the more valuable cards is Captain Tarpals, which is just not even a playable card by any means, but it's, and when I say not playable, I just mean not good. Sorry, they're all obviously fully playable regular promos. Right. I'd compare it kind of not this extreme, of course, but you've got your Imperial class Star Destroyer, Corellian Corvette, and Star Wars CCG. They're not great cards, but they're $1,000 because they're tiny print run. Again, you're not going to.
I think this is actually a good story to close the episode with. So my understanding is Captain Tarpals was a promo at DecipherCon 2000. So, if you registered, you could choose between Imperial class Star Destroyer, Corellian Corvette, or Captain Tarpals. And I just don't know if many people chose Captain Tarpals, which is one of the reasons why this card is fairly valuable.
Yeah, I'd still say it's just for people so they have some sort of a guideline. I'd say you're looking at more like $50. So we're not talking about even 500. You're talking about a $50 card, but still $50 for a Young Jedi card that's not playable in a deck is obviously quite high. That's funny.
I feel like someone who picked up the Captain Tarpals is kicking themselves 20 years later.
That reminds me, I think most people will get this reference, but like way back in the day when Star Wars CCG was brand new, I've heard stories of people trading a mint black border Darth Vader for a Black Lotus, because back then you were a relative similar value, but
now I don't know if all the Darth Vaders in existence would trade for one Black Lotus, right? So I think that covers it all. So in summary, we have 686 cards. There's 6 sets, 3 core sets, 2 expansions, reflections, 2 enhanced, some tournament foils. There's enough to play. There's enough to collect. It really depends on what you want to do with this game. But I really encourage folks to hop in. It's, like I said, it's cheap and it's fun. And I think we'll go through some of what the cards look like a little bit later. But I think this is a great entry vehicle for people looking to get into maybe cards and just don't know where to start. So any final thoughts here, Eric?
No, I think you covered it really well. I will say the one thing with this game is if you are actually playing versus collecting, there can be a very big difference because typically collectors are going to get 1 of each card for their sets. If you're playing this game, certain desirable cards you can potentially want up to 10 of in your deck because this is based on a 6x10 deck building system, they call it. It's a very easy deck build where they have 6 different colors of dots that are going to appear in the lower corner. But the point is you make a 60 card deck and you have to have 10 cards in each of the dots. There's no restrictions on the number of cards you can have in your deck though. So if you do want a specific card, you can have it up to 10 times in there because your building dot is your only restriction. So like, for example, if you're building a Trade Federation tank deck, you might have 10 tanks in a single dot and you'll need 10 copies of that tank card if you're really trying to make the deck as best as it can be, or 10 copies of Queen Amidala's blaster rifle, so things like that do make it harder. But even if you look at the secondary market singles prices, you can get the singles you need incredibly cheap. You're talking $1-2 for key cards that you might need. So I'd still encourage anyone who wants to pick this up to play that it's very, very doable if you keep yourself to those first 3 sets.
Absolutely agree. So that's all for today. Tune in next time. We're going to go over Menace of Dark Maul a little more in depth and kind of talk about the foils, what the cards look like, etc. And then we're going to go through each set. So that's sort of a preview of what's to come. Like, subscribe, check out Eric's channel if you love Lord of the Rings TCG. He has Tower of Orthanc. No, is it Library of Orthanc? Not the Tower. But I'll leave a note to that in the notes. He does really good Lord of the Rings TCG stuff. So check that out, and we'll catch everybody next time.